Hello and welcome to Charlotte's Web, everybody. This one is going to be probably slightly less high octane than the previous ones due to the subject matter. But I'm really pleased to announce Jacqui Deevoy and Richard Cox to Charlotte's Web. Welcome all.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hello.
Hello. So for people at home who might not know who you are, Jacqui, would like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm a freelance investigative journalist, have been for a long time, 40 years, be 41 years this year. Started out on teenage magazines, women's magazines, newspapers. And it's only really in the last 6 years I've started doing like the deadly being the operative word, serious stuff, you know. I always wanted to do kind of easy work, you know, like writing short stories or, you know, writing features for teen magazines or doing, you know, astrology, which I did for a while. But obviously, I got drawn into the more serious stuff over the last few years. I mean, probably about 10 years ago, no, longer than that, hold on. Yeah, 2016, I started, 2013, I started looking into side effects of vaccines and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I worked in 2013 and 2014 at The People's Voice with David Icke. And that kind of set me off on a slightly different path, more serious sort of stuff. And so for the last 6 years, I've been looking at all the crazy stuff that's going on, making myself very unpopular with the mainstream media editors that I used to get on so well with, and made 3 documentaries. And we've written this book now, and here I am.
Nice one. Hello, Richard. First time I've met you, but yes. Pleasure to meet you. So I should introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Richard Cox, and my life seems to have become split between doing spirituality and philosophy work on the one hand, and writing and podcasting around more geopolitical issues on the other. And for relevance of this conversation, around 3 years ago, one of the pieces of writing I did was a report on the state's response to COVID, looking at it, trying to apply a kind of philosophical lens to measure the mandates. The report was called Measuring the Mandates. And that brought me into contact with Jacqui, because the missing piece for me when the viral hypothesis seemed to be falling apart was like, yeah, but what caused the excess deaths then? And I eventually saw Jacqui's documentary, A Good Death, got in touch with her through that, and it became a big part of the writing and the picture I was building about COVID at the time.
Amazing. Well, this might be a good opportunity to play the trailer for A Good Death, which was an iconic production, wasn't it, Jacqui?
It was. Me and Jamie and Gabriel McCartney made it, and yeah, we spent a couple of weeks filming all over the place, and I still think it's a great film. There's nothing in that film. There's nothing wrong with that film. Everything that's, you know, that I said in that film, I stick by to this very day. You know, nothing has changed. It's all because it's the truth, and the truth is constant. So yeah.
And it set you on the path to writing the new book, Murdered by the State. So we'll play this and then we'll get into it.
A good death needs 3 things. It needs equipment, it needs medication, and it needs the staff to administer it.
I realised something was wrong when I found out last year that my dad had a DNR put in place when he was in his care home.
So in terms of equipment, a few quick questions. Do you have enough syringe drivers in the NHS to deliver medications to keep people comfortable when they're passing away?
I found this quite alarming and thought it would make a really interesting news story. I contacted 28 editors. They decided not to run the story. They never explained why.
And the second one is with that's the syringe drivers deliver medication, particularly things like midazolam and morphine.
He was awake at the time, but upon going in that room, he was sedated with midazolam and given morphine and never woke up.
T34 is a cocktail of medication drip feeding under the skin, and now I know that was given to kill her as quickly as possible.
The end of life is really the most crucial time in your life. Midazolam weaponizes this end of life so-called care.
So you're saying voluntary euthanasia is assisted dying?
Yes.
And euthanasia is... Where can that happen without the patient's consent, though?
It's happening all over the country every single day of the year.
I spoke to her and I said, "You're right, darling." She said, "Get me out, get a wheelchair and get me out of this hospital now." She said, "They're trying to kill me."
She was crying, begging for help. All medication stopped, no nutrition.
I said, "How do you feel on a 1 to 10? She said, "I don't know. I've got to keep my wits about me because I'm dealing with these silly people."
These stories needed to be heard, and I realised they'd be better captured on film than on paper.
Do you have any precautions put in place to make sure we have enough of those medications to be delivered?
Yes, right now we do.
I remember watching that, and it's just absolutely horrific. I mean, first thing I was going to say there, Jacqui, really quickly, is Matt Hancock. We can say lots about him. I've done on previous shows, but do you think he was aware of what he was facilitating there?
No, it's not whether I think it or not. He absolutely was aware, and he orchestrated a lot of this. By once he was the health secretary, and he decided to bring in the COVID protocol. NG163, which is an exact replica of the Liverpool care pathway, which was abolished in 2014. He put this proposition of a pathway to two professors, including Dr. Sam Ahmadzi, who's one of the most well-known palliative care specialists in the world, and 9 doctors. And they all said, and they put this in a letter, an article on the BMJ, the British Medical Journal. They told him not to implement that protocol because it would kill people. And he said, "Thanks very much," and implemented it anyway, because that's the sort of guy he is. I've seen him in the flesh. I was in a courtroom with him. So that little clip that you saw there, him talking about getting in a huge order of midazolam, 2 years supply, which lasted about 9 months. You have to question that, obviously. And that clip that you showed there from the start of A Good Death, the iconic film that I helped produce, that's him talking about midazolam. That was April the 17th, 2020. In court, a couple of years later, he absolutely denied any knowledge of midazolam, said he'd never heard of it. In court, under oath, he said that. And I'm in the process of trying to get him back into court with Geza Terriani. I don't know if you met Geza. He's doing a lot of work behind the scenes. Some people think he's a crazy guy, but that's all right for me. So I do have, I'll have to send you the link to the crowdfunder that we've got to finance Geza doing all this work.
Gaza's the guy who challenged him, Matt Hancock, on the tube, wasn't it? So
that's why we were in court. So we were in court because so Gaza's chatting to him walking along the street, follows him into the tube station, still talking very politely. Matt barges into him twice. They get to the top of the escalator. Matt suddenly stops. So Gaza almost barges into him, but doesn't. He kind of stops himself in time. In court, Matt Hancock's saying that Gaza tried to push him down the escalator. So, and the video was shown in court, and it was clear to everyone in the courtroom that's not what happened. He didn't try and push him. He wouldn't do that, you know. He's been doing what he's doing for a long, long time. The man's the same age as me. He's like in his 60s, and he's, you know, he does things properly, even though sometimes it's a bit wild what he does, like camping outside Downing Street and stuff, which is good, because that's the only way voices get heard these days, I do believe. So yeah, he's doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but in the courtroom, Matt Hancock was just so cocky, so arrogant, just there with it. He had his hand on his hip, and the tail of his jacket kind of flicked out, and it was clear that him and the judge knew each other, and it was just like a farce, really. And everyone's sitting there going, "That's not what happened." So anyway, so he's guilty of perjury, but of course, all these people in the sort of positions that he is in, they get away with perjury. If you or I committed perjury in court, would be arrested and put in jail, probably. I don't know, but anyway.
Yeah, and also in the trailer there, you say about how you've tried to get this story out to all the papers that you used to work for, the journalists involved, and it'd be remiss of us not to mention the likes of Isabel Oakeshott, who worked closely with Matt Hancock, who dismissed your claims and refused to read anything you'd written, hadn't she? Is that right?
Yeah, I contacted her because she put out that tweet saying that anyone who claims that their loved ones were murdered in hospital by midazolam and morphine are a bunch of crazies, all wanging on about that's the word, wanging on about this. So I just contacted her very politely and said, "Oh, you might like to see the film. You know, it might give you more insight into the subject. You know." And I was ever so polite, and she was ever so polite back, and we kind of toed and froed a bit. And I said, "Do watch the film and get back to me." And the next time I looked, a couple of weeks later, to see if she'd, messaged me or anything, I'd been blocked by her. So it's like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
I did see that Deborah Meaden, Ukraine flag in bio, seems to have been listening to some alternative voice in the last few days. She's there were a couple of things. I saw that she should purchase your book. And what was the other thing now?
It's good to see you there.
She was
people, so
yeah, but I think she made a point about cancel culture on X, and I think they all came after it. She was basically saying that it's non-existent that people are getting sacked for free speech issues, and then all these people gave different examples. The Graham Linehan came on, and various other folk, and so she ended up having to concede on that as well.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Richard properly about Deborah buying our book. What do you think of that, Richard?
It's a bit surreal. I think we did message about it. It's kind of like, it's great and a bit surreal at the same time. You see these people on TV, and the next thing, they're buying it. So, but I think it's fantastic. Yeah,
I think it's good because they're the sort of, she's got a lot of followers who don't know about this sort of stuff. And I think it's really important. And rather than being in a little echo chamber, like we often find ourselves, it's good to just, reach out to people who might not know, and their followers might not know. And she's got like over 600,000 followers. So if they read that little conversation, which again was perfectly polite and nice, she seemed very reasonable in the short interaction that we had. I think it's worth doing that. I've also reached out to Ricky Gervais because once I did a post about Ricky once a couple of years ago, and he replied. I wasn't expecting him to. I'd just seen a news story in the paper. He had a bout of vomiting and diarrhea, and it was the headline news, obviously, because that's massive news that he's got a runny bottom. But they said that his quote was, "It was the worst thing that's ever happened to him in his life." So I just did a post saying, if that's the worst thing that's ever happened to Ricky, then he's very lucky, And he responded immediately, going, "Yeah, I am actually. I am. I'm a lucky man." So. And of course, him responding to my post got my post millions of views as well. But that was fun. But so it's worth reaching out to people. I think I don't know how I've gathered this. I think it's from watching Afterlife and Derek that he's kind of all for a bit of euthanasia, voluntary, obviously. There are a lot of people who do support assisted dying and voluntary euthanasia. They don't realise that involuntary euthanasia is happening, and involuntary euthanasia is murder. So, they're probably just not aware of that.
Bringing you in, Richard. Hello. I guess just back to even the Deborah Meaden thing, is this book and the other work that you've done, Jacqui, and Richard, what you've done on your podcast, the Deep State Consciousness podcast, opening people's eyes to this subject matter. Is this something you found easy?
No, I wouldn't say. I think in some ways people have been open to some of the arguments, but in terms of actually taking that next step, it's such a big shift in what you would have to think about the world and what it might imply about the nature of COVID and what we've gone through. It really can move you outside the tribe of acceptability. Okay. And that's something that I think is a big challenge to overcome. People would rather stay in the world where they've done all the right things during COVID, even if they thought the mandates went a bit far or whatever. There's a kind of Overton window. But I do think that's shifting over time, actually, because when I wrote my paper on COVID a couple of years ago, it was very hard to get any traction for the idea of iatrogenic deaths driving the death spike, and it not being primarily or perhaps anything to do with the virus. Okay. And I sort of took that kind of hard at the time. I just couldn't get any headway with this. And then I noticed other people couldn't, but I think that's shifting. Like that conversation, I noticed people are more willing to have. So big transition, because 2020, 21 and 22 was like an asylum. Okay. We're all living in this absolute crazy world. And then all of a sudden, 2023, the world felt very different. And I think it's incrementally gets different again every year on this as we get further away from it. There's more comfort in talking about these things. So I think the real key thing for me has to not to become disheartened, right, and carry on talking, because next year the conversations will be better again.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that, and it's testament to you, Jacqui, that you've not been disheartened by continuing this path that you're on. So you've released, as you said, A Good Death, Playing God. That was another part of that, and then here you are with your first book. So tell everybody about the book and what the contents are.
Is 42 stories penned originally by relatives, and one is a friend, not a relative. So of people, of the victims. There's 40 of them on the cover. We couldn't really fit 40 on, and it was fine with the people who don't appear. So, and so that's.
I think Jackie's internet's just dropped there. Are we live, or is this going to be edited? You're currently muted.
I'm muted and she's back.
That happens sometimes. There is something wrong with my broadband here. So so we got people to tell us their stories. Me and Richard wrote them, edited them, and got them into this book. And that's, I mean, that is the tip of the iceberg, really. I mean, in my support group alone, I've got nearly 200 people, and I've spoken to probably about 1,000 people over the last 5 years, all telling pretty much the same story. The most recent horror story I heard, I actually posted about it on X this morning, is a very close friend of mine who's just had heart surgery in hospital, and she's survived amazingly. But the 4 other people in ICU at the time, those five people died in one night. This was like 3 days ago. So, and she was the only surviving person, and she's like, I've got to get out of here. So fortunately she's home now, but 5 people in one night. And if you read the post, it's absolutely horrific. Loads of people are saying, oh, you know, this didn't happen, sort of thing. You've completely made it up. As I keep saying to people, why would I do that? Oh, to promote your book, because I mentioned the book because it was relevant to the conversation, you know, hospital horrors, you know. And if it promotes the book, great. That wasn't the purpose I put it up. I just think people need to know about this stuff. You know, she wanted to stay anonymous because for a lot of obvious reasons, and she's still really traumatized by what she's been through. But to witness that, you know, and she's thinking, I'm next, you know, I'm going to be next. Now, and it was very odd because the first 4, the machines started beeping, and the defibrillators came out, and the next thing they're dead, one after the other. And then the 5th one, the machine just beeped and beeped and beeped, and no one came. The person was left behind. And she's like, I'm next, you know, because they'd all been through similar surgeries to her. And people don't want to believe it. I don't blame them for not wanting to believe it. A lot of people are saying I'm scaremongering and it's really dangerous and I'm stopping people from going to hospital. You know, they're not going to go and they're going to die and it'll be all my fault. But it's like, I just think people need to be aware of all these stories. And if you choose not to believe them, that's up to you. But I've got no reason to lie, and I don't lie. And my friend doesn't lie either. But a lot of people think, oh, she was probably on morphine. She was probably hallucinating. It's like... She's had confirmation that 5 people died that night. So, of course, she's not making it up. Why would you make that up? You couldn't even make it up.
Touch wood. Luckily, I've not had much experience in hospitals in my life. The thing here and there, but I am more and more petrified of the idea of going, even for something so little, you know.
I had to go into hospital in October.
Yes, of course you did, yeah.
Yeah, Worthing Hospital, and they were brilliant. I saw 7 doctors over the course of 3 days. Everyone was lovely. The doctors were amazing. The nurses were lovely. The guy who brought the tea round was lovely. I felt like I was on holiday, you know, because I didn't have any symptoms, so I didn't feel ill. I felt like a right old fraud in there, you know.
So when you had the TIA?
Well, no, I didn't. But I had such high blood pressure. They thought that was about to happen. So they just kind of monitored me for 3 days, and it didn't happen. So, like, yeah, fortunately it didn't happen. But I've just got weird blood pressure, and it just goes really high for no reason sometimes. And probably the stress of doing all this stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, I was surprised. And then you broke all your arms and legs as well that time.
I made me sound like a spider. All my arms and legs. No, I broke both my ankles in an accident in 2020
Yeah.
on April Fool's Day, as it were. But in Malta, that was a nightmare. So I've got constant PTSD in my own life, and then I've got all the dreadful stories that because it's not just writing a story. You know, you're dealing with the people. Richard's doing some brilliant sort of long form interviews with them as well, audio, which we're putting out as well. If you want to mention,
Yeah, please tell us. It's been quite harrowing to speak to these people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a couple of things on that. One, we made the decision to do the audiobook with as many as possible of the actual contributors reading. I was actually thought that would be a logistical nightmare and said, oh, we can't do it. And then we did do it. And it was actually, I was completely wrong because, well, it was logistically challenging, but well worth it because you've never heard an audiobook like it. Okay. And not in every sense in a good way, not in a way that's going to make you happy, but in a way that really the emotionality, the tone of the voice takes you into that experience. So, I mean, we've had people say that they could listen to one a week or something, haven't we? They can't do more than that. I totally understand. And I'm doing some long form interviews where I'm just giving people the opportunity to say whatever they want to say, and they can talk for 15 minutes, they can talk for an hour, step by step going through. And I'm just asking the questions I think the listener might want to hear, if anything doesn't quite make sense to me in the story. And that is, I would say, humbling is the word, right? And I feel intensely grateful after everyone to the people who could have so easily just stuck this experience in a box deep down in their psyche and never looked at it again. And that, I think, would have been the easier thing to do in a lot of ways. Okay, but they've chosen to engage and put this in the public domain. And whilst that may or may not be ultimately better for them, it's something that's so necessary for the rest of us and so necessary for society. But it does evoke a lot of suffering to sit there and have to relive this and relive it. So I'm really humbled and appreciative of the people for doing this and getting these stories out there.
How did you manage to find each of the contributors?
How did we? I think I must have contacted you. I must have come across A Good Death in some way. Just a backstory to that. Okay, so.
Oh yeah, well, I had the support group, so I've got an immediate pool of people who are ready to tell their story. So Richard found them through me, through working together. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I misheard the question slightly.
Yeah. We could put together another book tomorrow. The same length, the same size, 250 pages, 42 more stories, and we could do another one the week after. If we wanted to. We could probably...
Well, how do the people in the support group find you then? So, in terms of what are they looking for? Are they people who've not got answers to their situation, and people have recommended your group? People have recommended you?
Yeah, I mean, it's over the years, it's evolved from these 16 people I started out with who were just in a terrible state because they'd seen me talking to David Icke on his podcast in December 2020. And we were talking about, is there a cull going on in the care homes? What the hell's going on here, you know? And then, there's David's review of the book, yeah. And then it just escalated, and more people coming to me saying, I think that happened to my mom, I think that happened to my brother. And then, and then social media helped with that as well. And it's just a WhatsApp group. But because some people have been in that group so long and they've done so much research, they're so knowledgeable now. They're more, and we do have a doctor in the group as well, just because they've been through the same thing. Didn't get them in as a doctor, but there's so many very, very knowledgeable people in the group that everyone can help each other. It's very difficult in a WhatsApp group with that many people, but it does seem to work. And also, there's always someone up. You know, if you're up because you can't sleep at 4 a.m, someone else will be up, because this is one of the problems. The ripple effect of these murders in the hospitals and care homes and hospices is unbelievable. The relatives and friends of the victims, they're never the same afterwards. When you've had a loved one murdered, it changes your life completely, and the effects of that include anxiety, depression, insomnia. You know, not able to work, you can't focus. So many things. I've been through it myself because both my parents were murdered in similar circumstances, which is just a horrible coincidence, really. It's nothing to do. People say, is that why you've done the films and the book? And it's not, because I didn't even think about what had happened to my mum until I was talking. It was when I was talking to Gareth Icke, actually, in 2021 about what had been going on, that it kind of dawned on me. It was my birthday, 2021, and it just dawned on me that you know, that had actually happened to my mum, and I hadn't even realised until that point.
Wow, yeah.
And then, obviously, while I was editing A Good Death at Iconic, something had happened to my dad. So he was killed by paramedics in his own bed at home. So they overdosed him with drugs, and there was nothing wrong with him. He was recovering from a stroke, but.
Are the doctors and nurses involved in all of this? I mean, has there been any justice? Have either of you spoken to doctors and nurses about these scenarios?
Closest I've come, I don't know if you have, Jacqui, but I interviewed, and this would be a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, a lady who was a manager of a care home just nearby where I live, okay? And the government went into the care home and she was removed as the manager because COVID got into the home, supposedly. And that was blamed upon her, okay? And she was absolutely vilified in the press. People spat on her in the street. Okay, she attempted suicide over this because she was blamed ultimately for like 20 deaths in the media. Okay, and it all came to absolutely nothing. But she was receiving reports out of the care home from about government nurses going in and injecting people with high doses of midazolam. And in the area on the Isle of Man where I live, that was kind of the big scare story here. Okay, that had gone to a nursing home and suddenly 20 people were dead. Okay, so that just emphasized the importance of all the lockdowns and the PPE and the masking and the social distancing. It sort of brought it home. But I have this testimony of the manager who was judged to be a sensible and sane person and sufficiently responsible to look after the most vulnerable people in society and to distribute dangerous drugs to them for over a period of decades, giving her absolute opinion that they were overdosed on midazolam. And the coroner's office and the police here wouldn't touch it. The police even wrote into the media because when the story broke, and it got about 500,000 views on Twitter, this clip of this, right? So the media responded to it, and it was like a write-up in the paper, and the police said, "Oh, we're not going to look into it." Essentially, we're not going to look into it because the coroner's offices have said it's all COVID deaths. So that's the closest I came to. I know that there were other people there who were reluctant to talk because they have jobs in the government, right? And they wouldn't speak out. But that's the closest I came. I don't know. Have you had any more contact with people on that side of the equation?
Operation Talor as well prevented those deaths being investigated properly as murders, because when my dad died, shall we say, I actually reported it to the police as a suspected murder, and they kind of pretended to investigate. And then after a few months, I contacted them and said, "What's happening?" And they said, "Oh, we've closed the case. There's nothing to see here. Everything's fine. We've spoken to people." And I'm like, "Who have you spoken to?" I asked them, did they want a statement from me? And they said, "Well, you weren't there in the room when it happened." I said, "Well, most people aren't there in the room when a murder happens, witnesses. You know? A statement about, the conversations I had with the paramedics, what was going on at the time, how, he died so quickly. And it's a really awful story. I did write about that, and it's published on David Icke's website, actually, The Truth About My Dad. You can see that on the website. But it's a very harrowing story, and it happens so quickly. 1 minute he's fine, the next minute he's dead. And this is a recurring theme as well with the stories, that they're fine, they're ready to come home, and the next thing they're dead, or someone goes in because they had a dizzy spell, and the next thing they're dead. It's like you don't die of a dizzy spell, And it's not just the elderly as well. It's young too that have been victims.
I saw the I've got the wrong word for him now. He's not an undertaker. Is it embalmer John O'Looney?
He's a funeral director, yeah.
Funeral director, of course, yeah. He's reviewed your book.
Yeah.
But he's another example of another profession where there's only a few lone voices speaking out and seeing what the actual horror of what's happening is.
Yeah, he's like me, dog with a bone. I get on very well with John. When I was doing my show for UNN, I had him on probably 4 times, I think, because he's great to chat to and very knowledgeable about what's been happening and outspoken. And he doesn't care in the same way as I don't care about what people think or say. And I haven't got a job to lose. I'm broke and jobless anyway. This is my job now, doing this, obviously. But obviously it doesn't pay very well. But I envy people who work in the co-op. I'm serious. It's like, wow, they've got like a monthly wage coming in. We're doing on book sales now.
You're doing something for you that is, well, your conscience will be clear. You know, you can't, you are a dog with a bone. If you were to ignore it and let somebody else deal with it. I mean, think about so many professions, especially with the COVID thing, who some people, you know, had a hunch something was wrong, but they started to get on with it. You know, even in my previous life, I had to be quiet while, you know, managing a team of people and things like that. And luckily, I'm in a position now, again, touch wood, where I don't have to pretend to be something that, not suffer from wrong think anyway.
Yeah. How have you managed that, Richard? I was just curious when.
Yeah.
Managed to navigate through the world.
Yeah, you managed to be able to speak out and write what you write. The reason I chose Richard as to work with is because of the amazing report he did, and he's written the brilliant foreword for the book, which I think is about 25 pages long, isn't it? It's great. It's most of the report, basically, isn't it? I mean, how many pages was the actual report?
Oh, no, it's about, I think it's about 27,000 words. So
Yeah,
what is that,
wow.
150 pages, I guess?
But
Yeah, and
well
it went
worth
through
yeah.
masking and the thing, I don't know if this goes on YouTube, so the thing we can't mention on YouTube and the lockdowns.
Basically,
And everything.
what we've got in the foreword is 100th of the actual report, but it's still like sums it all up really, really well. And Richard's obviously very knowledgeable about it. And now I've forgotten the question asked. Oh yeah, what about and it's not my show. What am I doing?
No, you've got it. No, yeah, how you navigate through the world with, I guess, knowing what you know.
Right. Yeah, I feel okay. I think maybe the sort of spirituality stuff balances us out. So there's an overall kind of positive. And I remember reading a David Icke book when I was 18, which whatever's happened since then, sort of intellectually for me or whatever, it was a very interesting foundation because the biggest secret it was, which goes right into the darkest depths. Okay, whether you believe them or not, it does go into those dark depths, and then has this expression at the end about but it's all an infinite ocean of love that we're swimming in, and that's what we all come back to. So there's kind of a balancing out, sort of psychologically. And then I don't know if that's what you're actually asking me, Jacqui, but it was a more kind of worldly sense of how do I earn a crust of bread or something doing this, or how do I get on with people?
How do you manage to speak out freely without having any penalties? You know, like I was saying, the reason going back to the original thing you're talking about, the reason we haven't managed to speak to nurses and doctors and people who've been involved in this conspiracy, because it is a conspiracy in this crime against humanity, is because they've signed something, or they're not allowed to, or the children are going to be killed if they dare say a word. I've no idea what the threat is hanging over them, but for whatever that, it's a good threat, whatever it is, because they did not speak out. They will not. All they'll speak out about is the actual government narrative, and they won't step out. I mean, there've been a few nurses and care workers who have spoken out and lost their jobs immediately. And right at the start in 2020, I did a couple of articles for the Daily Mail, for the Mail Online, with a couple of people who did that. A girl called Carly Lou Mansfield.
Oh yes.
I mean, she was working for the NHS in a care home, I do believe, and started saying, you know, COVID's a load of nonsense, which is great because we're all the emperor's naked people, you know. And I've always been like that, and you've probably always been like that. Have you always been like that as well, Richard? It's like you just have to tell the truth. It's like everyone else is saying black, and you've got to say it's actually white, you know.
Yeah, I think I think maybe I'd always had a commitment to truth. Okay, I think probably I thought the emperor was fully clothed. I was about 18 or 19 years old, and then realised that maybe his overcoat is missing, and maybe his trousers aren't on, and it's progressively, oh no, he is naked.
About 15 years ago, maybe a bit less, I used to work in a medical centre. I really enjoyed it, actually. I'm glad that I left pre-COVID, because who knows how many you-know-whats I'd have had since then. But I do remember often talking about, but not really fully understanding, to patients about the Liverpool Care Pathway. And so do you cover that in the book? Because a lot of people might have heard of it but not understand what it is. But maybe if you'd like to explain, one of you, it's up to you.
I don't mind. Well, it was, I mentioned it earlier, that it was abolished in 2014. It was a barbaric, inhumane care pathway. There was no care involved at all, in which patients who were considered to be end of life were, they had all their essential medications withdrawn. They were starved. They were had fluids withdrawn, so dehydrated, and they were administered end-of-life medications which killed them. So it was basically they were being put down and killed because they were considered to be end of life. And most of them did have terminal illnesses from what I can see. And then what we saw in 2020 was this same pathway being brought back in, renamed NG163, later changed in March 21 to NG191, and used against all advice not to use it to treat COVID. It was a COVID protocol. Now, COVID obviously didn't exist, but let's say it did. It's this respiratory virus that's going to kill everyone in the world, and everyone's terrified. And you go into hospital with a respiratory problem, and what do? They give you drugs that depress your respiratory system. A benzodiazepine and an opioid, usually midazolam, usually morphine, could be fentanyl, could be lorazepam. But this mixture, if you look in the BNF, the British National Formulary, it's advised not to ever use a benzodiazepine with an opioid because it will possibly kill you. It depresses your breathing over a period of time to the point where you're not breathing anymore. So, yeah, that's basically the Liverpool pathway lives on. The Liverpool care pathway lives on. And in the period between 2014 and 2020, it was still being used. Mm-hmm. In fact, someone just said to me today that they had a loved one in hospital not that long ago, and they actually referred to the pathway as the Liverpool care pathway. They didn't calling it by the new name. They all know what it is. And nurses have seen, doctors have seen. The doctors are clever. They don't ever actually administer the drugs. They get the minions to do that. So this is why they're pushing the assisted dying bill as well, because, you know, my theory is once that comes into force and people are allowed to voluntarily have themselves killed, then when all this stuff comes up, like all scandals do, 30 years later, you know, thalidomide, the infected blood scandal, post-office scandal, 30 years later they'll go, oh, well, you know, it's all different now. People do that all the time. What's the big fuss? You know?
Yeah, that's a good point.
At this moment in time, it's illegal, but I think in the near future, sadly, we'll be following in Canada's footsteps, where people go in and get diagnosed with cancer and they're offered, oh, do you want chemotherapy? Do you want radiation therapy? Or would you like to die? You know, I mean, this is what's happening now in Canada, and it's such a slippery slope. Millions of people every year in Canada now are now being killed by medical assistants dying, and it's getting worse. Children,
depression falls under that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, they'll kill you for any reason. They want you dead. I mean, it's a massive depopulation process, but as soon as you say depopulation, it's like, oh, crazy.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, just on that really quickly, because if we are talking about it being, I guess, in lockstep and with Canada and I think Australia, New Zealand have talked about it. You know, the usual suspects. Is there something similar, or has there been in countries like the USA, Canada, of the Liverpool care pathway? Because one of the drugs that you didn't mention, which I heard come up often in American programs, is remdesivir, which I guess is that the midazolam equivalent?
They use that here, but in America, Fauci recommended that to use for COVID. I mean, Richard might know a bit more about that than me.
Yeah, it's not the equivalent. I actually spent 5 hours reading through Robert Kennedy's book on the remdesivir chapter, and I have to say, like, my analysis was he got it wrong. He exaggerated the dangers of the drug. I'm not saying it's not. I would not be in the queue to take it. Okay, and there are questions about its effect on the kidneys, but it's an antiviral. It's not, whereas midazolam is a sedative and a respiratory suppressant. So if it is having a negative effect, it's having a negative effect for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. But trials.
But just to speak to your point, I did look as much as I could for examples going on elsewhere in the world. In some ways, in Britain, we were sort of fortunate in a media sense that Amnesty did a big report as early as August 2020, where they basically figured out what was going on. They basically figured out that all the old people had been evicted from hospital as soon as COVID was announced. They were sent to care homes here, there, and everywhere. Doctors weren't coming in, and they were just putting people on end of life over the phones. And Amnesty still thought this was in response to a virus. Okay, fair enough. But Amnesty basically clicked it. And then we've had Jacqui doing the journalistic work on with the accounts directly from individuals. And then we've had statisticians like Norman Fenton and Martin Neal at Queen Mary's University doing the statistical analysis in this country. So I do think in this country, and maybe this is all going on in Spain too, and I just don't read it because it's in Spanish, but I do think we have had a very strong media response in this country from the alternative, and a really good analysis of what happened compared to other places. But if you look, you do find reports out of Sweden that the initial spike they had there, in spite of not having lockdowns, all was in the nursing homes where they were distributing midazolam at this higher rate. And you find the same things going on as reported in the C2C journal in Canada. And the other factor would be ventilators will be a huge issue in New York, which caused, because in New York, the geography is where you see it, because there's like one particular district of New York where the death rate will go up to 1,000% excess, and then right next door there's nothing. Okay, because it's a different hospital district, so the different protocols are. That's what kind of demonstrates that it's not viral, because you have these like Spain and Portugal, or Italy and Slovenia, like right next to each other, with totally different north and south of Italy, no comparison in the death rate at all. So you can see just geographically, it's divided up along which district you go to hospital in.
Interesting. Yeah, and if we had a killer virus, where are all the people dropping down dead in the street, and where are all the deaths at home from the killer virus?
All the supermarket workers, etc., etc.
Yeah, or just people in the supermarket, people in shops. So, you know, the only deaths really occurred in care homes, hospices, and hospitals, and that was because mainly of the protocol that was in place at the time, NG163.
So the book Murdered by the State, is this solely COVID-related stories?
We've got a couple of stories in there that were before COVID, but mainly, yeah.
Yeah. I just want to read that's on the website. I think at the bottom we put in, is it HTTPS? It's going to come up in a second.
BIT.ly, yeah.
Yes, so everyone needs to go to this website to read more. But on this, it says, wondered why a loved one in a UK hospital, hospice or care home died suddenly and unexpectedly. Suspected the end-of-life pathways involve more than just palliative care. Heard about patients being given do not resuscitate orders or lethal drug cocktails without consent or transparency. Questioned the sharp rise in deaths under the 2020 death protocol NG163. Felt frustrated that mainstream media has ignored stories of involuntary euthanasia in the UK. Believed that vulnerable people deserve protection from involuntary euthanasia and blanket democide. And this book is for you.
It is.
It is. Was there anything else you wanted to add about this? We've done 45 minutes nearly.
Yeah, is that long enough for you? I could ramble all on all.
Yeah, no, go for it. I needed to be off, so I didn't want to press you. I've got ramble a bit more, both of you. Go.
We can. I don't know. What do you want to know about in particular?
So where can people find it? The audio book, etc. I know we just mentioned that.
You've got all the information there, which is brilliant. So you've got following you, following me. Find Richard's website. That's very efficient. That's good. And where
there's a website for the PDF of the book. And that will take you through to get the hard copies, paperback or hardback, on Amazon. And the website also has the audiobook download. And the PDF is donation based, so everyone can afford to get a copy. And like whatever people can afford to put in, I think there's a recommended amount, whatever that is, but it's donation based, because we're absolutely keen that everyone can get a copy of this. And I would really ask that if people are listening to this, that please do check out the website and at the very least download a copy, because we need to get this information. It's imperative that we get this information spread, even if we're in a long battle and nowhere near the end of it. This has to come into the public domain, and everyone can contribute to that.
Yeah,
and take care.
Yeah, if you can't afford to get the book, as Rich was saying, the PDF can actually be free. It's donation based. You can pay 1 penny for it if you want. So everyone can read it. I just think it's really important.
It really is important.
Obviously, we do appreciate donations, because then we can, quite literally, we can do the second and the third book and whatever else, and get as many of these stories out there as possible. We just need to make it absolutely overwhelming and unignorable, because this story, the Liverpool Care Pathways, it did break. It broke in, I think it was the Telegraph in 2008. Published a letter from 4 doctors saying, "Oh, there's something really funny going on here. We've lost track of what's going on with the death processes in hospitals," and that started a chain reaction, which led to the government inquiry. So it's not impossible to get this in the media, and that's what we need to do again.
Well, it's been impossible for me, and I'm still trying on a weekly basis, every so often, talking to the same editors. Well, a lot of them have disappeared now. They don't work for the papers anymore, gone on to work for big pharmaceutical companies, most of them. But just to say, are you ready to publish this story yet? I'm such a dog with a bone. Now they just ignore me completely. It's just tumbleweed every time. But go on, sorry.
I was going to say, I mean, we talked earlier, Richard, about the Overton window and things like that. And the Daily Mail, for example, are publishing in terms of the vaccine injuries, heart issues since the vaccine, you name it. When once a day they were demonising everybody. And so they ignored you. Are they ready to listen to you now?
Yeah, well, another thing that I was pushing at the time, that was vaccine injuries, it was the involuntary euthanasia story. There was also the misattribution of deaths to COVID. This was right from 2020 when people were saying, my husband died of cancer and it's got COVID on his death certificate, They didn't want any of that. But then about April 23 or 24, can't remember which one, one of the editors of the Telegraph came to me and said she wanted some more information on that. I'm really interested in looking into that now. And part of me is like, oh, you're so many years too late. And the other part of me is like, no, get the ego out of the way. Just give them the information because, sometimes I think better late than never. But often I don't like that. But and then she said, can you send me like 5 examples? So I sent her 7 just to be on the safe side. Full stories of people who had loved ones' deaths misattributed, and then nothing. And then, a few follow-up emails from me going, what's happening with that? Did you have a chance to look at it? Are you going to use it? Are you going to pay me for all the work I've done? And there's nothing. No, of course you don't get paid for any of the work. Occasionally they might, if you've spent a lot of time putting effort into, like I sent one thing to them, which was an interview with a consultant doctor in London about DNRs. And so I wrote that all up. And of course, they never published it because they were saying DNRs are being put on people over 50 in some hospitals. They deem that elderly. They're being put on people with mental health issues. They're being put on autistic children. They didn't publish anything about that, but it was a great interview. And I got it published by an alternative news site. But no, they still don't want to hear that stuff at all.
It's I'd love to just see the chain of command there. So the journalist goes to the person who says no and sweeps it under.
Well, I think they're obviously under Operation Taller as well. That's
yes.
Because right from early 2020, I was thinking they're not allowed to publish this stuff. This is weird because normally they would snap up this kind of stuff. What's going on? And they also weren't telling me. There was only one editor who said to me when I sent him some vaccine death stories, he said, we can't publish stories like that because it could jeopardize the vaccine rollout.
Yeah, well, good.
Yeah, I know. But I couldn't believe he actually wrote that to me. And I actually wrote an article about that. But he's disappeared as well now. Some of them were clear about it and some of them were just very tight-lipped. And with the involuntary euthanasia story, what was shocking in 2020 when I was telling one editor about it, I mean, thinking about it, she was probably in her mid-30s at the time, maybe late 30s. And she said, after I told her the whole story, she went, well, it's not much of a story really, is it? Because it happens all the time. And I'm like, yeah, that's the story. People are being killed in hospital all the time and it's illegal. And she was like, yeah, but, we all know that, when people are old and ill, they get a bit of a helping hand at the end. Everyone knows that. And I'm like, yes, but it's illegal. They're being murdered.
Yeah.
Well, not really, not if the doctors are doing it. And this is what a lot of people have grown up with, believing that that's okay to hasten someone's death and to end their lives is okay if they're old, daft, or
they were going to die anyway, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, and I've even had friends say, I said to me, I think that's happened to your relative. And they've said to me, well, she had dementia. She's probably better off dead. And I'm like, oh, okay then.
Well, what about a couple of things that come to mind from when I used to work in the medical centre about little old ladies who got into hospital, for example, with a broken hip, and then I remember one who I was really close to, because I used to love them all. Anyway, I remember her husband came in to tell me that she died and said she ended up falling in hospital and getting pneumonia or something, as though that was always a possibility and always happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I went into quite a few care homes and hospitals at the time because my dad was in and out of 2 care homes and hospital. But he was never terminally ill. But the paramedics who dealt with my dad, they were told by a GP at my dad's surgery, he didn't know my dad's history at all. Mm-hmm. He told the paramedics that my dad was terminally ill, that he was having palliative care and that he had terminal cancer. And that wasn't true. My dad was healthy physically. He just was recovering from a stroke. So, not perfectly in good health, but he didn't have cancer. But the paramedics acted upon that information and killed him because of that information. So this is where the problem lies. And the paramedic who actually injected my dad is 21 years old. She was an advanced paramedic, a young girl. I've looked at her online. I stare at her sometimes, thinking, well, what the hell did you do?
Yeah.
But I believe these people have been trained, these young people have been trained to believe that they're doing a good thing, that they're putting people like these old crumblies out of their misery, and they're going to die anyway soon, so let's help them along. My dad probably had another 20 years left in him.
Yeah, that's sad. I mean, I did think that about you'll know more than me both to be about the protocols that were put in place for young care workers during COVID, which was a novel disease. Nobody, it's a pandemic, once in 100 years, and they have to follow the instructions put in front of them, no questions asked. That's how it works. Am I right?
Yeah. It was a strange time for all of us, but I think a lot of people, including myself, were left in a state of slight, if not severe, PTSD. I mean, I haven't even grieved my dad, and this is another thing that a lot of people who are related to people who've been murdered, you can't grieve. It's really odd. You can't until you get justice. You can't rest, and that includes not being able to actually. I don't even know what grieving is, to be honest, but. But I've seen a lot of people incredibly angry, very angry about what's happened. And
Richard, do you think we will get justice?
Yeah, I think these things take a long time. But if you look at other historical cases, like a lot of the stuff that went on in Northern Ireland and Hillsborough, it can take 20 years. But I think the momentum will build. So I think it will come out.
What does justice look like, Jacqui?
Well, people need to be held accountable for what they've done. Certain people, no names mentioned, Matt Hancock in particular, all the people who approved, of those protocols need to be held accountable. The doctors who went along with it, the bureaucrats in the hospitals, the CEOs, the nurses who actually administered the drugs that killed the people. They might say, oh, we didn't know. Well, you should know because you're a nurse. Why don't you know?
Yeah.
I think the other aspect is, of course, we need people to be educated on this, not just for the dangers going into hospital, massive as that is, but so that we really absolutely definitely don't lock down society again and have compulsory this and force that, and you must do what we say because we're the ones that know how to protect you from this dangerous thing that's come across from the east. We really need to destroy that narrative.
100%. And finally, what would you say to those who might be listening to this but still don't want to know? Like, I've got family members who even put hard evidence and testimonies, put people in front of them, and they just still don't want to admit it to themselves that this is going on.
I'd say watch the 3 films that I've made. I didn't mention the third one. The third one's called Unseen. Amazingly, it's on YouTube. So look up Unseen on YouTube. Playing God is on Rumble as well as A Good Death, and read the book. You will be in no doubt after you've done that. Absolutely no doubt. And listen to podcasts like this. Do your family listen to your podcasts?
Yes, secretly, I think.
I mean, they might think we're completely. I mean, a friend of mine said the other day, she's quite a new friend, she said, that doesn't happen in hospitals. I don't know why you're saying that. And I said, do you honestly think that I would have wasted nearly 6 years of my life investigating this, making films about it, talking to 1,000 people, and writing a book about something that doesn't happen. Why would I do that? I'm a bit mad, but I'm not that mad.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you both for the work you've done. That is God's work in a lot of ways, not playing God, but and also I will be listening to the audio book on my way to work, but one story per trip, yeah?
Oh, don't read it. Don't listen while you're driving. Seriously, no, you can. But it's quite. All your makeup will be off by the time you work. Seriously, it will be running down your face. Because I've heard the stories and over, but when you actually listen to a person telling their own story and that waver in their voice and them, not being able to, get the words out because they're so sad, it does affect you. Look, I'm getting all croaky just thinking.
Oh. Yeah. Oh no, amazing stuff. So thank you both for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. All right, see you later, everyone. On the next one. Bye.